TikTok, it's time to rock. Welcome to the channel, folks. Welcome to the ranking of the tracks here on the 5150 show. It's my pleasure to introduce to you, if you don't already know who he is the rock professor. He's a man of leisure. He's leading the life of Riley these days into his, third month of retirement?
Fourth, sir.
Fourth.
Fourth month. Fourth.
Now he's showing off, John.
What can I say? What can I say? If you can get away with it, do it. I would. I would have retired 2 weeks after I started working if I could have.
Yeah. Wouldn't we all? Yeah.
Like that one.
I only did 35 years as a civil servant.
Yeah, sometimes they walk past my desk, they see me sitting there, and I'm just thinking of pretending I've retired, and I just sit there.
Well, John, one day we'll get there. So, in the meantime, you and I will continue helping to spin the wheels of capitalism.
Yes. Hurry up.
Yeah. Should have listened to what my father told me.
Yeah, wow.
And what did he tell you?
I don't know.
Knock it off.
Oh gosh.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Good to see you too, John, filling in for the backdoor man. Becoming part of the channel in ever greater quantity and qualities, John.
Oh, well, everyone's got their calling, and I'm a spare wheel, so I'm happy to jump in if you need me.
Oh, look, we appreciate it, don't we, Simon?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, reeled in. That's it. You're done for.
Well, I'll put up with you if you put up with me.
Look. If you're having fun hanging out with us for a couple of hours, mate, if you're having fun, because that's all we can get, Simon, out of it. If you're not having fun, you can't do it, can you?
Can you? That's in Africa.
Nope.
No, I've always said I don't care what you are doing. If you're not having fun doing it, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
At least you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, especially when it comes to music too. It's one of the things. One of the glues and one of the reasons why we all met on the internet, guys. It's through the subject and the content, and the great power of music. And we've been having some interesting conversations offline about movements and things happening in the music industry, and it's always those interesting things, Simon. It's perspectives. People have perspectives. You may not agree with them, but people are going to have perspectives, and there's different sides to a story.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yes. We've had lots of talk this week, haven't we, about the Alex Van Halen book and things. What's been going on in that world? Sounds quite mad to me, but
I'm already over the whole Van Halen thing.
Well, I'm going to say one thing because the rock professor brought it up. And I promise this will be the last thing I'll say on the subject of the Alex Van Halen book until I've read the book. So if anyone's familiar, Alex Van Halen has said some quotes. He's been interviewed on various publications talking about the band, where he's cutting off his memoir, what time period, etc., etc. He's ditched Sammy to a degree. He's ditched David Lee Roth to a degree. And then he comes out today saying, I really hope my memoir, my book, doesn't create divisions, because I don't really mean my book to be taken like that, John. But he's already fired shots, John.
Look, there's been no new bullet holes in anywhere that he hasn't shot before to start with, and as we were discussing in a group chat a couple of days ago, Alex never promised a history of the band. Alex never promised a complete autobiography of his whole life. The book was always touted as being about the relationship with his brother, and perhaps what needs to be said is covered in the the time period that he's using it in the book as where their relationship went. And it could be that after 1984, it was just more of the same. Then he got sick and passed away. I believe that also, it as they say, it'll end at 1984, but he will be, I'm sure, talking about the time of Eddie's passing as well. Could be that if you went through everything and wanted to give it all. The other thing too is you don't want to have 300 pages of the first 6 albums and then 7 pages of the Van Hagar era, or only 1 chapter after a whole book. So I think it's going to be a focused book and have a mission to accomplish, and that time frame is what sets out what he needs to say. I could be wrong. Maybe he's got other reasons or whatever like that. But as of yet, I don't think that he's ever promised anyone something that he hasn't said that he's going to do yet. So it's the type of thing we'd have to, like you said, have a look and see what it is. But it's a very well discussed sort of subject before that people really know what they're talking about until they read it.
Well, I said that I won't say anything other than my comment, so that's me done.
Yeah, I'll just one thing. What interests me is that I think people underestimate this, and John, I'm sure you've come across this at work, that the written word is a completely different thing to the spoken word. So you hear somebody say it in their voice and their context, gives it a whole different meaning to if you type something. I'm sure you've had emails from people and you think, blimey, that's a bit high. That's a bit take your ears off. But they don't mean it like that. I used to have a boss, and he used to send these emails out, and you just delete them because they were just crazy, and then just ring him up and go, "What's it about this?" And then he'd tell you in a perfectly reasonable manner. It's really funny. It's but yeah, just to go. So I think that's when you read stuff on the written word, even if it's quotations of people, that it has a different meaning to when somebody's saying it in a conversation or you're in a room, and stuff.
Yeah. I've always said I'm only responsible for what I say, not for what you hear. And unfortunately, like you said, the written word can be really taken. Somebody ascribes their own idea of what your inflection and temperament is on it. I've often written an email, deleted it, rewritten a third time, scrubbed that, and rang the guy because I want to be able to, let him know what exactly I'm saying. I've had that too. You read the email and think, oh, he's going to call me later. He's going to rip threads off me. And then, you get a phone call from the happiest guy in the world. So
not that at all. And you think, how did I misinterpret it? Kind of thing.
I'm always telling my team, the worst thing you can do is send anything ambiguous. Try to cram everybody into a yes or no answer.
Yeah.
But
no, absolutely.
Let's get on to what we're doing.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things we want to do, folks. So obviously John is filling in for Bradley, and John, you want to do a shout out to the backdoor man, I understand.
Well, I'm just, it's kind of, we can relax that he's not here today because you know what he's like. And, even like I know Ellen's in the chat. She can finally, stop having to pretend to say nice things about him like that. We were prepared to go ahead without him last week and then find that he doesn't know how to read a calendar. So, but, I said I'll come back for the actual time that he's supposed to be away. And I actually saw before he's down there in. You don't normally get to say this, but he's down there in sunny Tassie. He did a live on his Instagram about an hour and a half ago. I'll let you know because I saw it and I could see the little corner that tells you how many people are watching. I was the only person that sat through the whole bloody thing. I was the only person that logged onto the thing because it never went past one. But anyway, so it was a nice little shot of the back of his head. So that was good too. Had his wig on because he's no longer, got the long flowing locks, and he had his special Slash hat on. And he played a couple of songs there, and I sent him a little message, but I think that he ran away before he got to read it. But look, we're used to him. We love him despite what he is, what he does, and we miss him when he's not here. And just to make sure people miss him when he's not here, they bring me here. So that when he comes back next week, it'll be, thank God for that.
Yeah.
So Brad,
you might never come back.
Brad in the outskirts of Hobart, wherever he is, it looked like the stage was like in an outside pergola, and it was a beautiful sunny day. And the girls were dancing in front of him. So,
well, he might jump on. He might jump on, folks, because we sent him the link. I think last year when he was doing this gig, he jumped on for a bit, didn't he, Simon? Or was it the year before from the same gig? So I just told the boys in the green room before we went live that if any one of us are talking and I see him pop on, we're going to just bring him straight in. So he may gate crash the show. So we'll give him that opportunity, won't we, Simon?
Yeah, leave him in the green room for 10 minutes until.
I just want to remind you two folks that we won't be doing a show this time next weekend. We may do something. The Rock Professor and I and Brad may do something midweek, so we might have a chat over the next couple of days, and we may come on and do something midweek, Simon. So we'll let you know.
I'm available. It'll be fine. Yeah,
appreciate it. And before
the
Rock
away
Professor,
next week, aren't you? Is it Labour Day next week or something?
Yeah, Labour weekend.
Wasn't paying attention a bit.
So another thing too that we discussed in the green room, folks, we've already done a post on our social media accounts in relationship to this album, this great album here, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Damn the Torpedoes, came out in 1979, John and Simon. So I don't know what you guys were doing in 1979, but I certainly remember this album in 1980, especially having a huge influence on me. I just started high school, John, and Tom Petty was just captivating. That's when I fell in love with the guy's music, John.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was big. I mean, as everyone knows, I'll bore everyone with the story quickly. I went to see him the first time he came to the UK when he supported Nils Lofgren. It's when they hit big, because they didn't hit big in the States, and they came here and they did a tour supporting Nils Lofgren and really hit big. They were on Whistle Test and stuff, and really hit it. And they were instantly. They were morning, Tony. So I was a big fan. Went to see him live at the Hippodrome in Bristol, and he was fantastic, really, really great. And so I was a big fan on the first album and the second, and Damn the Torpedoes, which is his third. But all great records. By then I was working in the record shop, so came out when I was working out, so we used to play it regularly in the record shop. But so I'm
awesome.
Familiar.
Can you put Damn the Torpedoes down on the list, Simon, please?
Yeah, Tom Petty's on the list. So no worries.
Because we've done a couple of. I'm sure we've done a couple of Tom Petty albums already on the channel, haven't we? One.
We did the first one. We've done the first one.
The first one, yes, we have, and so we need to we need to probably look at doing this album next year anyway. So, but yeah, huge Tom Petty fan, and Mike Campbell fan as a guitar player. It was just a tragedy, a sad day when when the news broke that he passed away. It was just, and that wasn't that long ago, John, was it?
No, it's only just over a year, no, it's been longer than that.
Yeah,
a couple of years.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
You're gonna make me look it up now.
About 4 or 5 years.
Roundabouts, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, is it? God, his first album came out in 76 and 78.
2017. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. See?
Well, like everything else we've ever discussed, nothing's as recent as what we think it is.
You're right. Absolutely right. Yes, so we do look forward to doing that album. So, Rock Professor, do you want to do a shout out and kick off the show?
Yeah, let's say good morning. There's a few people in the chat. Thanks for watching. We've got Phil Bias, morning Phil, and Ellen, of course. Good morning, Ellen. Thanks for
hey, Alan.
Thanks for supporting us every week. It's much appreciated. And Tony as well. Tony Bowen, fresh from his Greek sojourn.
G'day, Tony.
UK. Get back to work, Tony. Stop messing about. So welcome to you all. It's good to see you all, and hopefully get a few more people. But yeah, see how we go. So morning to everyone from a dark UK. So, shall I begin? Shall we talk about when we came across this album and things, Andrew? When did you come across it?
Thank you for asking me that, Simon. So, love talking about the Rolling Stones. We were talking before in the green room about Eric Clapton being a pivotal person on this channel here, one of the hinges to what we do. I think the Rolling Stones, for me, is another hinge, Simon and John.
Definitely.
And, this album is seen by the experts and by this fan as the end of the golden run. You know, the end of the great albums. And I came across this album, John and Simon, later than all the other albums. And the reason why I did is because I had so many people who were giving me opinions about music back before the internet saying, you know, this album's not great. This is not essential listening. You need to be listening to Beggars Banquet, Exile on Main Street, The Masterpiece, Sticky Fingers, Let It Bleed, you know, all these great albums, Tattoo You. Don't waste your time listening to this album. So I came to this album as a Stones fan much later, after digesting and being bored up with all these other great albums that the Stones had done. And I remember listening to it thinking, Simon, it's not as bad as people made it out to be, you know. And I listened to it for a while, and I kind of ditched it, and I was listening to obviously the classic albums. But it wasn't until I struck up a friendship with Carl and having a conversation with Carl and talking about this album, where I went and renegotiated this album about 2015, 2016 again, where I came to sort of appreciate it in a deeper sense. So, is it my favourite Stones album? No, it's not. Is it a masterpiece? No, it's not. Is it a great Stones album? Yes, it is. Has it got some diamonds? Well, there's a couple of diamonds on here, and there's a couple of, plonkers. But, we'll talk about that. But I'm glad we've picked this album, Simon, because, the Rolling Stones are still going. We did Bruce Springsteen last week, John. He's in his 70s. He's still going, still performing. The Stones are talking about, going on another tour. So, we're relevant, John.
if people are buying what you're selling, keep selling it.
Yeah. So thank you for letting me take a little bit longer than what I would normally do with my intro. But yeah, I came to this album a couple of times, but certainly much later than the other albums, Simon.
Yes, it does. It does suffer a bit by comparison to the previous 3 or 4, doesn't it? Beggars Banquet, Let You Bleed, Sticky Fingers, and Exile on Main Street is, and I think you could say this about a lot of bands, that a lot of bands have 3 or 4 album kind of, purple patches where they're, not everybody, but a lot of bands do. And we were talking in the green room about Bob Dylan. You've got, bringing it all back home, Highway 61 and Blonde on Blonde. You could say is his one of his pretty much the 3 great albums, and 3 of the greatest albums, I would say. But um, and I think that coming after that 4 album run, that it's gonna suffer by comparison, really. Especially coming, it's the next one after Exile on Main Street, and that's that'd be tricky by anybody's standards. Critics' favorite, absolutely, and this being a bit more. But you've got to go somewhere, haven't you? You've got to do the next thing, and I think that for me, listening to it is probably the start of the Stones' next phase, which almost they've been in. They were in for another 30 years, kind of thing. Where they made decent albums with some decent tracks on them, but never quite hit the classics. Although Some Girls is a really good album, Tattoo You is a really good album. So they made other really good albums in the after those. But
Black and Blues, great
Emotional
album.
Rescue. Well, Some Girls, Emotional Rescue, Tattoo You. That's not a bad run, is it? 3 album run. And Bridges to Babylon is. I like Bridges to Babylon. It's pretty good. And of course, Hackney Diamonds is a really good record. Got some great tracks on it. So I think that's where on the other hand, you see, this is where I came into the Rolling Stones. This is 73. I started buying records then, but it kind of, I'm 15. So I've started buying records, started going to gigs, but it was a big deal, really, this album when it came out, because it was a new Rolling Stones record, and after Exile, and it had a big hit single, Angie, on it and things. So it's quite, it got played a lot in my world as a, it's like, as I say, it's where I came in on the Stones and then went back to Exile and back to Sticky Fingers, etc. So I have fond memories of this record, of hearing it quite a lot around the period it was released. It's got the Stones groove, hasn't it? It's got what you're looking for from the Stones. But I think it's after that Purple Patch, it's where they had to start thinking about what they were going to do a bit, and we can get into that when we talk about the individual tracks. But yeah, so I think it has lots to recommend it and things, but yeah. So that's me about it. John, do you want to say any more? Or are you good?
Oh well, I just really quickly. I was really unfamiliar with this album, pretty much in its entirety, except for one song. Obviously, Angie being a very well-known song, always played on the classic radio, and most likely showing up on most of the greatest hits compilations. But I pretty much heard Star Star a few times, just probably out of its notoriety. And the other songs I only first heard when you guys said, let's do this next week. So back in 1994, a lot of these, all the albums from, I think from Sticky Fingers onwards, went to Virgin Records, and they released these CD versions of them that were recreations of the original album packaging. Like Sticky Fingers actually had a zipper on the front, and Exile, they had all those little postcards with it and everything like that. And I bought Exile, Sticky Fingers, Tattoo You, and Some Girls. And no real reason at all. Didn't buy this one. Didn't buy It's Only Rock and Roll. I had a look at, obviously, just to get an idea of where this sat in the pantheon. And again, Only Rock and Roll is another album where I know the title track and that's it. So Stones have always been very much a pick and choose band for me. There's some albums that I've listened to a lot, and there's some albums that I haven't listened to at all, and a few in between. So yeah, it was an interesting journey going through this one this week, because it was obviously new stuff for me.
Well, if
Fantastic.
you can go back and watch our show about It's Only Rock and Roll. plug.
I was about to say, I saw that It's Only Rock and Roll had an anniversary this week, so I was wondering why we chose this instead of that. But obviously, if you've already done it,
Yeah.
And actually, we have released the 18th of October, so it's 1974. Blimey, yes, you see, 50 years ago. As usual, we're right on the ball. We'd already done it, so
yeah, we've already done a couple of posts on that on our social media. So thanks for bringing that up, guys. Yep, 74, October the 18th released. So on the money, Rock Professor.
Yeah. Morning, Mission. How you doing? Good to see you. So
yeah,
anyway,
he says let it bleed as a masterpiece. No argument from me, because you know, yeah. No argument.
Well, it's you take your pick, don't you? Take your pick out of Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, Exile. Which one?
Exile.
Which one?
Oh.
They're probably all that is probably their big masterpiece run of records.
For me, Exile is Exile. Yeah, Exile. That's a desert island record for me, John.
Ooh. Yeah, no, definitely. But I wouldn't argue with that with Let It Bleed Mission at all. So,
that was the album that propelled the '69 Stones tour of the US, one of the greatest tours in rock and roll history, Simon.
Yeah, absolutely. Propelled them.
Anyway, sorry. So
the greatest rock and roll band in the world, ladies and gentlemen, the greatest rock and roll band in the world, the Rolling Stones. I do believe. Fantastic. So, Goat's Head Suit is the 11th studio album by the Rolling Stones, released on the 31st of August 1973 on their own record label. Interestingly, so they set up Rolling Stones Records. They recorded most of it in Jamaica, with a bit in the States and a bit in the UK, and it's the last album to be produced by Jimmy Miller. They then started doing their own things. So maybe we could talk about that. When you don't have an outside producer, you produce things yourself. How things change. So as they move forward, Bill Wyman only appears on 3 of the album's 10 tracks. The other bass player duties being done by Keith and Mick Taylor. But the rest of them, Jagger, Richards, Taylor, and Watts, play on every track. And they have their regular collaborators: Bobby Keys, Billy Preston, and Nicky Hopkins, and Ian Stewart as well. I'm sure you realise this before. What I hadn't realised reading up on this was that when they do a funky song, they get Billy Preston. When they do a rock and roll song, they get Ian Stewart. And when they do a kind of in between song, they get Nicky Hopkins. They kind of got a keyboard player for each of their different genres, if you like, which I hadn't realised until I pointed out doing the research for this. That's quite cool. Like, yes, but of course it's true. That when they want to do an old rock and roll thing, they get Ian Stewart to do it. But, I think it was, it was a big hit. It was, as I say, Angie was a huge hit. Played everywhere. But the album itself was kind of mixed reception. And I think we can get into that when we go into each of the things. the front cover is a photograph by David Bailey, who's a friend of Mick Jagger's, and quite a weird cover, but the thing. So yeah, I think we should get into it, guys. What do you think? So we start with if we're all ready to roll, if we start with track one, this is always the best place to start. Side one. As you know, I always think about these things in vinyl terms. Yes, that's right. It's Dancing with Mr. D. So it's a typical sludgy Stones rocker, and he comes in. Keith comes in with that very classic Stones riff. You spot the mile off. Couldn't be anybody else, could it? It was just going to be him, and the drums and the bass. And the lyrics deal with allude to either a dalliance with death, probably, that sort of thing. So it's quite a dark lyrical content. Yeah, it's, as I say, it's got that typical Stone swagger and groove, isn't it? And that you take quite a lot of some nice intertwined guitars on it, and some, it's got some percussion, some congas, and Nicky Hopkins on piano. Because this is neither rock and roll nor the funky side, so it's Nicky Hopkins on piano. There's Mick Taylor playing the bass, does a fantastic job doing that, playing the bass. I think it's a fine opening track, and I'm going to give it 9 out of 10, but never a skip. It has a lot of classic Stones riffage to it. Andrew.
Yeah, cheers, Simon. I just want to add something to your intro. So we've got to remember, folks, that it was number one in the UK for 14 weeks and number one in the USA, John, for 19 weeks. So, while the album got caught up in the turmoil of other albums, but it certainly struck a nerve with the listening public that were buying albums, Simon, at the time, so got to bear that in mind. So I'm glad that that you've mentioned the Mr. Jimmy connection, because I'm sure we can talk about him a little bit more during the songs. But Dancing with Mr. D is a great song, isn't it? Keith talks about it a few times, and in his biography, he talks about it, being a song about death and the dice, rolling the dice. And again, one of the great things about the Stones as songwriters is that a shitload of their songs are autobiographical, because apparently Anita had been hanging out with the Rasta Mafia elements in Jamaica around the time, that they were preparing for this album. So there was, some heavy stuff going on. So, the Dancing with Mr. D, that scream at the 2 minutes and 15 mark on the song, go and check that out. Apparently, according to a lot of Rolling Stones fans, is an actual scream that they recorded from a voodoo ceremony. Now, whether that's true or not, we don't know. But, there's a lot of people out there in the Rolling Stones world backing that up. So it's, not a 5150 show rumor. Doesn't surprise me if that's true, because the Rolling Stones were always a band in search of authenticity, and the elements and the environment was certainly aspects of motivating them to write songs. They did it with Exile on Main Street, Simon, didn't they? It had a huge influence on that album. So, Jamaica kind of has that influence on this album, which comes out on a few other songs as well, but certainly on this track. I'm glad that you mentioned Keith's intro, and what's really cool about this intro is not an open G, which is what he's famously known for. It's just in standard tuning, which is really good, because sometimes we forget, Keith Richards can actually play a standard guitar. It's not just all a five string, open G Telecaster, John. The guy can actually, play, and he does a pretty good job on this. For the scream, that's 5 points for the scream, Simon, and 4 points for the song. So if my maths is right, that's 9 out of 10, and a great opener. When I first heard it, the first time I heard this album, John, I love the opening track, and every time when I go and listen to this album, that opening track, it's a great track, but just quite not a 10 out of 10 for me, John. Pass it over to you, bro.
Yeah, I can see that. As I said, jumping into this album pretty fresh, and this song, like you said, without it being Open G, the famous sound that Keith has, it's still Keith's sound. It's like
Sure.
This album, I found very much that my overall impression of the entire album is that it's pretty consistent throughout stylistically. There's been, sort of a few of the upcoming albums after this dabbled in a bit of different reggae feels and more pop stuff. But this is definitely that classic Stone sound where you can't really describe what it is. It just, it's them. And so definitely I was sort of comfortable sliding in to hearing that. Lyrically, I thought it was very interesting. You definitely got that voodoo and that blues element. The Mr. D keeps it ambiguous as to whether it's Mr. Death, Mr. Devil, or Mr. Dawkins or whatever. Could be just a guy hanging around wherever he is. But no, it's definitely an interesting track. One of the tracks, like I feel that this album's got a couple of real standout tracks, and the rest of it is very much not same, but very similar in feel. There are ones that are a bit more rocky, a bit more funky, a bit more laid back, but definitely they really feel like they are part of one album, and I definitely feel this album has a very cohesive sound. So this definitely sets you up for exactly what you're going to get. I liked it as well, and one of the songs that sort of just halfway get me there, I gave it an 8. I feel that after listening to this album for a week, there's a couple of songs that I can go away and sort of hum in my head, and there's a couple of songs that I accidentally start mixing bits of each other up with them. So this is sort of nearly there, but definitely the lyrical content sets it apart from the rest of the album.
Cool. Thanks, John. Just Andrew, I reminded that what you said earlier about the dice, that I don't know if I read this, the Dice Man by Luke Reinhardt. You ever read that? It's the story of a psychiatrist who lives his life by rolling the dice, which came out in 1971. So if you haven't read it, it's an amazing book, extraordinary book. It's still in print, so it still has that dreaded word occult following. But so I always thought Mr. D was kind of about drugs, really, but not could be, but not quite so much. Nevertheless, okay, great opening. So track 2 is 100 Years Ago, and I think that kind of picking up on what John was saying, for me this album has quite a lot of different styles and things, and I think it's also, the other thing that struck me about it is it's quite keyboard heavy as well. It has lots of keyboards on it, and that's kind of my overarching impression in many ways, is that it's almost the Rolling Stones keyboard album as much as anything else. Has this track has both Nicky Hopkins, and it has Billy Preston on it playing the clarinet, and it has that kind of that starts off with that with those two instruments, and the kind of wah wah guitars, kind of sort of like getting into that kind of funky zone they play. Apparently, it's it's an older song. Mick Taylor said it was an older song that Jagger had a couple of years before, and they hadn't got around to using it. And kind of has it's kind of wistful air with a country lilt. I think there's a bit more funk in that as well. But nevertheless, kind of interesting, kind of world weary lyrics from Jagger as well. That I think Jagger's on pretty good form on the lyrics on this record. I think there's some tracks are lost, but certainly put some effort into it, and it's great. I mean, I think as I say, it's got that kind of, it uses that kind of 5-4-1 pattern, that classic blues sort of pattern, but it has the electric piano and the clavinet lead on it, wah-wah guitar as well. A really great lead playing by Mick Taylor in the middle, kind of thing. And then you've got, again, for those dynamics of having a stop and then gradually come back in to it, which give it some dynamics. I gave this 8.5 out of 10, but never a skip, I think. Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning Billy Preston being on this, because he goes and tours. That 75 world tour, Billy becomes a big part of the Stones, and they do all this crazy stuff on stage, So the 75 tour is definitely a discussion piece for a lot of Stones fans. But yeah, Billy, undeniable, his influence on this track. As the Rock Professor said, this song goes back to the late 60s in Mick's songwriting catalogue. And clearly it's a song that reflects on the aura of past things, which is, again, one of the great things that Mick Jagger as a songwriter has. He did a lot of that on Beggar's Banquet, reflecting back on, in a couple of age, a time in the past, Factory Girl, as an example. So, very, very good at being able to do that, and clearly a well-read young man, very, very attuned to that literary tradition, that the English writers and poets have given to the world, Simon, and Mick Jagger as a young man is putting himself right in the middle of it with some of these lyrics. I'm glad you mentioned the guitar solo, because the guitar solo by Taylor on this is fantastic. It's reminiscent of something that he would have done, clearly, John, in my opinion, back in the Crusade days when he was with John Mayall. It's very much, a blues solo, which is unlike what Mick was doing with the Rolling Stones and other solos on this album. Testament to the guy being one of the greatest guitar players in the world. It's an interesting song for the second track, Simon. It's never a skip, and I too have given it 8 out of 10. Great song though, John. Hey, great.
Yeah, I always think of the new guy, and for me, it's always keeping Ronnie in mind. And you go back to the early stuff with Brian, and I tend to forget about Mick. And Mick sort of played on a couple of my favourite albums. Out of their catalogue. But for some reason, he's just like the quiet achiever, and unfairly so. And I send out my apologies to Mick. Obviously, he deserves more respect from me than that. But no, this song, while the song itself didn't really grab me, again, it's just, this is the type of album that I can put on and it's just listening to the Stones and it's fine, and all of it's good, and there's nothing that I don't want to hear. But it's kind of sort of like background Stones for me. I don't ask me how the melody goes on this one after listening to it for a week. But one thing that I do really remember is that crazy wah guitar that he does, and then the funky bit at the end after the slow Lazy Bones bit. That sort of brings this song up to being more than just an also ran. So I don't know if I've been a bit harsh and I've given it a 7, but definitely I think there's bits of the songs that I love and bits of the songs which could have been anywhere. There's a few moments on this album that just like is just sort of like generic, brand Stones stuff, which again maybe that's because I haven't really had enough time to really soak it all up and really find out the nuances and differences between all of them and learning all the stuff. But I wouldn't. There's really nothing on this album that I would skip if I'm listening to the album, but definitely only a couple of tracks that I'd put on if I wanted to hear that particular track. And this one's not in that category at the moment.
I think it's a really good point, that, John, isn't it? That my memory of these are the days when you bought an album and you listened to it quite a lot of times, and it revealed itself to you over a period, and not just I've got it in 2 listens and I've cracked it kind of thing. These are I think that thing about making an album with tracks that are layered, tracks that have different meanings, and you took some time to get into them, things is a really good point. And I think this is this is one of many albums where you hope that's the case. You get it and it doesn't reveal itself to you in all of you in two listens or 3 listens. You've got to live with it for a period. So.
And back in the day, if you were skipping a song, like you were going to an effort to skip it. Maybe the CD
era moved
got us to do one button, and now everything is just like at the flick of a finger, and maybe even to the point where it's just you just have to think about it. But definitely, like I said, I think listening to an album and listening to a bunch of songs can be 2 completely different experiences. I can't see the time where I would say, oh, I'm going to throw 100 Years Ago on in the middle of Panama, and I saw her standing there. But
possibly not.
Definitely, I'd probably pull another song out. But yeah, like I said, I can't fault it, but there's nothing that. Look, the highs are the highs, mate. The Stones have got some very big highs that the rest of their catalogue has to live up to, and not every song can.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's right. I think that it's that you are right. That there's a couple of tracks that that do reach that, but it's very difficult to reach those heights on everything and maintain them. And I think this is probably an album where those heights are not necessarily reached on everything, but it still has a lot of interesting stuff going on, a lot of things that reveal themselves over time. So that's worth it. Okay, so track 3. Go on, John. Yeah.
I'm doing the usual thing that I do when I'm on screen and forgetting to get into the chat. So our mate Gretch Zeppelin's just popped up. So hello to him. And for Phil, I don't know why he wanted me to slap myself, but there you
go. Gretch has fallen asleep before the show started, and not us sending him off, which is impressive. I think.
That's really it.
Yeah, Insomniac special. I'm liable to call these things. So track 3 is Coming Down Again, which is where Keith performs the lead vocals on, and it's credited to Jagger Richards, but it's largely the work of Keith, I think, who went as far as to say Coming Down Again is my song at the time of its release. A slower ballad in the mood of another track on the album, Angie. The lyrics tell of Richard's relationship with then girlfriend Anita Pallenberg, who's chosen to abandon her romantic liaison with his friend and bandmate Brian Jones. Although that's one of the stories, I think Keith told a different story in his autobiography, Life, didn't he? I also, to me, Coming Down Again is about literally coming down, the sort of heroin thing, and I always felt that it was more about that. But he said, I don't know if it's about dope, it's just a mournful song. But he said, I wouldn't have written it without heroin. which is okay, Keith. And it's but it's a kind of it has a kind of country vibe to it, which suits the melancholy of the song. As um, and he said in 2002, "I wonder about the songs I've written. I really like the ones I did when I was on heroin. I couldn't have written Coming Down Again without that. I'm this millionaire rock star, but I'm in the gutter with these other sniveling people. Keeps me in touch with the street at the lowest level." Well, that's probably about right. Yes, absolutely. Okay, that's funny, this, isn't it? Because I don't know about you guys, but when the intro, which is Nicky Hopkins playing the piano, I immediately, I can't help myself with this. I'm doing a lot of morning, Jim. How you doing?
Hey,
I
Jim.
can't help myself associating myself with other songs, but the beginning of it, that piano intro, sounds like Private Dancer by Elton John to me. It's like it got very much kind of like that Elton John vibe. I was like, really? That can't be true. Went back and listened to it again. Yes, absolutely. I'd be saying that I'm not sure. I think that was really copied Elton John, but it has that similar sort of vibe. I think he sings really well on this, Keith Richards. I think it's one of his best vocal performances. I think, there's some substance to the song itself. Nice wah wah as well throughout the song, and really great Bobby Keys sax solo as well. Really nice, sort of smoky, sort of late night jazzy solo that I really like as well. And some nice harmonies. I like the horns in the background as well. That's really cool. And it has an atmosphere, as he says, a sort of melancholic atmosphere to it that I really like. I think it's a really good song. 8 out of 10 from me, and never a skip. Pretty good. Andrew.
Yeah, g'day, Jim. And Phil wanted you to slap yourself because you weren't recognising the depth and the influence of Mick Taylor as a guitar player. That's all, John.
Oh, yeah. No,
Yeah,
definitely deserves. Well, need a second one. I freely admitted that.
Yeah. And Phil wouldn't be Phil without making that kind of comment, mate. Trust me, he's a long time Stones fan. Seen them live a few.
I back his judgment 101%.
Oh, yes, yeah. Phil is a resident Stones expert. Look, it's a great song, isn't it? It's about nothing other than the highs and lows of life, and you read into it what you want, as people often do when it comes to Rolling Stones songs and or rock and roll songs in particular. But I have to back up the rock professor there. Keith isn't one to sort of fondly talk about the positive side of his drug addiction, like some stars do, but he'll happily tell you about how he likes going to the candy store and buys candy, and sugar and lollies and stuff like that. So that's taken a precedent in his life these days. I think the track's really interesting because you've got Keith on wah on this, and Mick Taylor plays the bass, as the rock professor said on the intro. Bill's missing on a few of these tracks.
Most of them.
Yeah. And it's not the first time, that the Stones have, missed major members for some of their great songs. The Beatles too also did that, didn't they? There's been, a few songs where John, or Paul didn't contribute at all. So it's a testament to a rock and roll band that they can just carry on and get the job done. I like that. I like that work ethic. Got to remember that these guys knew that they were producing music to be consumed. Bobby Keys on sax is interesting, and that was an overdub added on later, folks. That wasn't recorded live, and I think that's one of the great things about Bobby Keys too, as a key contributor to this band. He didn't need to be John in the room to get the vibe. He knew the Stones. By this time he'd been gigging with them for a while. He was up to play, and you got to remember, that the Rolling Stones sacked him because he was late to a concert because he was you know, in a bathtub full of champagne with 8 prostitutes. So he,
Mate, I nearly
he
didn't make this show.
yeah. So he certainly picked up some good habits and some bad habits from the Rolling Stones and that rock and roll lifestyle. Simon and John, I've given this a 9 out of 10. I think it's a great track. Never a skip. John.
Yeah, out of all the, and I might have missed a couple, but out of all the Keith lead vocal songs that I've heard out of the Stones catalogue, I've got to say this one is the most Mick-like. And I tell you that
Yeah.
because I think it was about 5 listens
Yeah.
before I realised it was Keith singing. Really, I wasn't like, concentrating super hard on it. But then I tweaked to it one particular listen when I heard it a few times. And yeah, I reckon it's a great song. Lyrically and stylistically, it's got a fantastic vibe to it. And I really like the sound of it. This is one of the tracks really that, like I said, out of this album, I either still haven't got a handle on the songs or I got them straight away. And this is the one song that I didn't get at the start, but I've really grown into and I really like. There's probably only a couple of songs on the album that I'd prefer to this one. I'll go this one a 9, and I'm quite partial to Keith getting on the mic and doing his bit. And this is a good song, not just a good Keith song, but a good Stone song.
You nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah, we say good morning to Frosted
Fine.
Head. I don't recognise that name. Thanks for joining. Hope you enjoyed the ramblings of the deranged. So
What I did.
track 4 is Do 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 Heartbreaker.
You missed the do. You missed the most
Mr.
important
Do.
one.
What the do? Which one?
The 5th one.
Do 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 do. So this is track 4. The song's lyrics relate 2 stories. One is a story of the New York police shooting a boy right through the heart because they mistook him for someone else, and the second is of a 10-year-old girl who dies in the alley of a drugs overdose. So really upbeat subject matter. The latter event is not known to be factual. In April 73, a 10-year-old boy named Clifford Glover was with his father when plainclothes police stopped them at gunpoint in Queens in New York City, supposedly having mistaken the two for suspects in an armed robbery. The robbers were described as being about 1 foot taller than the boy. The boy and his father ran, fearing they were about to be victims of a robbery. The police chased them, and one officer shot the 10-year-old boy in the back, killing him. The bullet entered Glover's lower back and emerged at the top of his chest, i.e. went through his heart. The case resulted in riots and a murder indictment against the officer, who was later acquitted in a jury trial. After telling the story of the police shooting the wrong person, Jagger sings, "You heartbreaker with your 44, I want to tear your soul, your world apart." Quite chilling line. The song itself is, of course, the 44 Magnum thing is made famous by this film Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood in Dirty Harry. But, so it's first recorded in November, December 72, and then being recorded earlier the following summer. Jim Horn arranged the song's horns and played sax together with Bobby Keys and Jim Price, who played trumpet. Mick Taylor played lead guitar, and Keith played the rhythm guitar and bass, and most prominently, Billy Preston played clavinet on this kind of urban funk track. I think that's what it is. It's a kind of urban funk track. Lots of I think that it points the way towards that kind of their kind of funk disco vibe that they picked up in Some Girls and later albums for sure. And this is a bit of an exploration of a different style for them. And as I say, very much clavinet led by Billy Preston. Great horns as well, kind of giving it more of that urban kind of black feel that this track has. and a great Mick Taylor solo, I think, as well. So, plenty of story in there, plenty of things going on. I give it a 9 out of 10 and never a skip. Andrew.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, it's a great song, isn't it? It's a gritty lyric, about the realism of that toxic mixture of crime and drugs and the lethal effect it has on young people, especially in America. And as I said earlier, and I'll keep saying it when we're talking about Rolling Stones songs, they have a knack of capturing that realism in their lyric, and this track undoubtedly does that. What's really interesting about this track too, John, it's a standard 4-chord song in E for the Stones, but what gives it that, that dark jazz funk groove and propels it is that the Rolling Stones, when they're singing the verses, the chords, the E chord is in a minor. And then when they jump to the chorus, it's in an E major. And they've never done that up until this song, and that kind of is a reflection of, like I said earlier, that jazz, dark, funk groove, that was prevalent at that time. We were talking about Bruce Springsteen last week, weren't we? And there were a couple of tracks that he had that were sort of bouncing off this kind of funk aspect, that was, dominant in popular music at that time. And the Stones are doing that to another degree that only the Stones can do. I think the song's incredible. It's the second single off the album, Simon. One of the great tracks. But upon reflection and talking about this album with a couple of other friends during the week, it doesn't get played on classic radio to the degree, that Honky Tonk Woman and Jumping Jack Flash do. And I kind of like that, Simon. I kind of like that there are some polished diamonds in some of these Stones albums that you can go and listen to and only have maybe one song that is blasted on your radio all the time, and we'll probably get to that. I think we've got a bit of an idea of what that track is. But the good thing about this album that I picked up on is that, I don't hear a lot of these songs daily or weekly or monthly.
Nope.
And I like that. I like that a lot. It has no effect on the score, John. But I've given this a 10 out of 10 and never a skip. John.
Yeah, this one here, definitely the treasure for me on this album. Again, like I said, I only knew one song off this album, and this one has really been a discovery for me because
great.
I really like it. And definitely this one will start getting put into my my Stones playlist of random songs from here and there. The one thing I love about it, definitely has a Stone sound about it, but really has that before. I mean, the first line of the song is, tells you it's New York and tells you it's about the police. But up until the bit where the vocal comes in, just hearing that bit of music before it, I thought, man, this is the music from a 70s cop movie.
You got it.
And 100%, they encapsulated that sound perfectly for the lyrical content. And I love those sorts of movies, and I absolutely love the type of music that belongs in those movies. So this one, no brainer for me that this gets actually it's catapulted above a few other Stone songs, which I really love, to be really one of my favorites. And this is pretty much, one of the songs that I didn't need to get into because I got into it on the first listen. Wow. I love this one. Definitely the big discovery for me on this album. 10 out of 10, definitely. I'd never skip. I'd even, jump over a couple other songs to listen to this one. But yeah, this is definitely a new favourite of mine.
Well done, John.
Definitely. Cool. Fantastic. Thank you, John. Okay, so last track on side one is Angie, and I guess that there isn't anybody who doesn't know Angie as a song. It's a hit. It's one of their absolute classics. Appears on their greatest hits records. It's credited to Jagger and Richards, but I think clearly that acoustic guitar thing is one of Keith's, greatest melodies, greatest progressions, chord sequences, and together with the distinctive piano raised accompaniment, apparently written by Keith, but played by Nicky Hopkins. So, Keith showing his prowess as an arranger as well by arranging them. Strings on it too, arranged by Nicky Harrison, and it's I don't know if it's one of their greatest songs. I mean, there's that beautiful harmonic to start. Keith just plays that harmonic before he starts strumming. The acoustic is so beautifully recorded as well. Just sounds fantastic. Jimmy Miller knew what he was doing in terms of the technicality of recording an acoustic guitar. So it sounds fantastic. It's I think this song is without fault in my books. The harmonies are fantastic. The strings are beautiful enhancement to it. The piano is fantastic. Great piano accompaniment. Nicky Hopkins does a fantastic job. It's a huge score, isn't it? It's a Brad score. It's a huge score. It's such a classic to me, this song, and I can't imagine ever skipping it. I know sometimes you get over familiar with songs and things, but I think this is a song of great beauty and great substance, and it's fantastically done. So yeah, a huge score from me. 8,000 out of 10. And clearly never skip. Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. I have to agree with you. It's definitely an incredible song. I remember listening to this song, hearing this song on the radio when I was young, and like some songs, that you hear after. It's one of the songs, John. The handful of songs I remember when I was a young guy. I don't know how old I was, and I remember this song. Marrakesh Express, Simon, by Marrakesh Express is definitely another one of those songs. Because of the harmonies, especially. And I think that's what I liked about this too, was the vocal delivery of Mick Jagger on this song's incredible. It's been called a soft rock acoustic ballad. I don't give a shit what you call it. You can call it a soft rock acoustic ballad. You can, definitely is a ballad. And John, you're not going to be surprised if somebody hears this and they think, well, this is in the same musical tradition as Wild Horses. So if you made that connection, you're not wrong, because you can see the connection or hear the connection with that tonality and all that good stuff that the Rolling Stones do in some of these songs. You mentioned the acoustics, Simon. The acoustic guitars, both played by Mick Taylor, I should say, folks, and Keith Richards. And that soft piano by Nicky. And you mentioned Nicky before, with his contribution and the strings. It's just fantastic. I just, when I hear the song, I think it's just incredible, and I'm just sort of getting a little bit sort of emotional about it now because, you know, I know some people over the years that have had bad news and, you know, without going too far, and one of the reasons why they managed to get out of the bad news that they were in, and it was really, really bad news, was, you know, listening to this song, John, you know, this song specifically. So, you know, that connection, you mentioned it before last week when you were talking about a couple of songs, when you were talking about them, you know, that personal thing that you have. And I think that's what I like about what we do here on this channel. Yes, we talk about the music, you know, what we've read over the years and some of the rumors associated and stories associated with songs. But sometimes, you know, we'd like to talk about, you know, those deep connections we have. And I certainly have a lot of deep connections with this song. Woman included. you know, yeah. Chicks like this song. You gave it a Hugh score?
I did.
Yeah, I'm giving it a Hugh score too. It's the first single on the album. They picked the right single to, and I think it was this song that propelled the album into those weeks at being at number one. You know, it was this song, John. It had to be this song. So I give it a Hugh score, 8 million out of 10. John.
Definitely the standout track on the album. And you mentioned before the connection with Wild Horses. I thought that as well. I'm struggling to understand how Wild Horses and Angie weren't, you know, of the same album and same, you know, sessions, really. They're just so definitely two different songs, but definitely intertwined in their feel and in their style. I got to say that this is an absolute classic song. Forget it Stones, forget rock, forget whatever. It's just an absolute classic piece of art. And I don't care who you are, what gender, what orientation, everybody at some point in their life has loved an Angie. And I don't think you'd find anyone who hasn't. It's just a brilliant piece of work, really. It you know, it just has a you know, a wonderful I know it's, you know, describes obviously the a romance, a deep love that for whatever reason cannot be, but neither of due to neither of the desire of either party. It's a wonderful representation of the preciousness of love and being in love, and the absolute sadness of losing something like that. What can I say? I don't do Brad scores, Hugh scores, or any other scores except for John scores. But this is the 10th of 10s. There is none tenner. You know, whatever 10 you're looking at, this is the big 10, the thick 10, the it's just absolutely fantastic song. You know, if you came home after buying this album in 1973 and one side was a mirror and the other side just had Angie on it, you really got your money's worth. This has always been a favourite of mine. The only song off this album that I knew before this week, just a banging tune. One of the Stones' best, absolutely one of the Stones' best.
Banging tune.
Thank you.
That phrase was never uttered in 1973, John.
You're talking to me today, mate.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, fab. So that's the end of side one.
Absolute favourite.
Yeah, the 10th of 10s. That's the new. 10. That's a new saying. The 10.
Dentist
It's
of
the tennis
tens.
of tens. All right, we got some picks, folks, that we like to show at halftime. So just bear with me while I pull them up. Where are we? Brand. We go here. So just want to remind you, folks, if you're watching on a replay and you've got here to 1 minute and 15, please subscribe to our channel and our friends. Go to our channels page and you'll see all our friends there. Subscribe to them. Get into the habit when you're watching videos and you like videos, subscribe to the person that you're watching a video to. Help that person. You know, you can like a video, but also hit the subscribe. Help that channel because YouTube don't help little channels. So we just want to make a point. If you're watching any videos you like, subscribe to the channel. And also I want to remind you that we have a merch store here now associated with our channel. So if you want to go and buy some t-shirts or a cup, we do get a small little bit of money for any t-shirts sold. It does go back here to the channel. I say a small bit of money, but like anything in the wheels of commerce and capitalism that grind along, John, it always goes to the big fellas. You know.
Yeah, don't worry. We're not buying villas in Italy or anything on the
No.
proceeds of this. I can assure you that.
No, we're not.
We're still in the stage of you are when you're a kid and you join a sports club and you play subs every week. We're still in the paying subs every week stage.
So here's the album cover that the Rock Professor mentioned that was taken by a photographer that was very, very close to the Stones.
Really?
It doesn't take a little bit of imagination for you to work out what that could be associated to. We'll let you work that out. And here's some other famous stills that were taken around the same time that they thought that they were going to use. But the band thought, get that boy there. Get him on the cover. So this is 73. This is the Stones at a press conference doing what they do. You might remember this, Simon. Apparently this was a big poster that they had around the lead up and the release of the album. You know, the goat's head soup.
The goat's head soup, absolutely, yeah.
The But We Like It thing seems to be alluding to the following album. Or was the original poster you're talking about didn't have that little inscription at the bottom?
Well, I'm not sure, but from
it's only goat's head soup,
but I like it. Yeah.
So apparently that's a poster that came from that period.
That might have been the inspiration for the tune, maybe.
It's only rock and roll, yeah.
So here's a picture of the Stones again, 73. This is taken not far from where John is. Here's another one there from the Lawn Tennis Club in Melbourne in 73.
I saw Billy Joel
there.
Apparently it was 40 degrees that day, John. It was hot as hell. Yeah.
Have you seen that Billy Joel is selling his mansion on Long Island? Was it for $43 million or something?
It's too far from work.
It's so big that it takes him 10 minutes to walk from one side of it to the other. Oh, if you get a chance to go and look at it online, it's worth a look. Funny.
So you can see the Stones here, 73, where they're sort of starting to dress a little bit flamboyantly, and they continue that theme on with their, especially with Mick, with his stage attire right through to the 75 tour. Mick Taylor, one of the great guitar players ever. Keith, early 73. Sorry, not Keith, Mick. Here's Mick and Keith Simon. There they are there.
Yes. The Glimmer
in
Twins.
73.
As we all know, this is the best version of the Rolling Stones, the one with Mick Taylor in it, in all the books.
Late 73. You can tell there by Keith's haircut. And the last pick there is 73. And again, we like to mention this every time we see this. Look how tight the Stones are.
Yeah. No wandering about, is there, on huge
It's
stages?
a very
Kind of
shallow
thing.
stage, though. Wouldn't have been a very big one.
No.
Going by the placement of the foldback, unless if that's not the edge of the stage. But
Well, it wasn't until 78 where Mick started gallivanting around those big stadiums, and
Yep.
and then certainly by the early 80s, you know, they were having walkways out to the crowd, didn't they?
yeah.
Thank you for the picks, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen.
great stuff.
Thank you for the pick.
Cool picks.
For the pick interlude.
For the most rock and roll band in the world. For sure. Okay, fantastic. So we're on to side 2. And it begins with Silver Train, which is, again, is more of a rock and roll thing. So it has Ian Stewart on piano. It has a kind of country it reminded me very much of Little Feat, this song. Like a Little Feat vibe with the slide guitar thing, that slide guitar figure at the beginning with that kind of country feel. Mick doing the harp, imitating the train through the thing, and a nice bluesy slide solo. Yeah, great, and some really nice bass playing as well. It's not Bill, it's somebody else. It's in that, you know, as I say, it's kind of an earlier version of the Stone to that rock and roll flavour to it. That I can see why you put this on as the first track on side 2, kind of a sort of up tempo opener on it. Ultimately, I think it's one of their deeper cuts. I'd say one of their more minor songs in a way. I kind of agree with John that, you know, that you get into this and, you know, I like the song. I think it's fine, but it doesn't really have a massive hook, and it's not massively memorable, I don't think, as a thing, you know. So it's fine as a piece. I gave it 7.5 out of 10, but not a skip. Andrew.
Yeah, it's its closest cousin is All Down the Line off Exile on Main Street, which does have that hook that the Rock Professor talks about, and this is certainly a track that's in that vein. Taylor plays slide, and Keith is playing rhythm on this. It's a southbound blues rocker, you know, heading somewhere, but it ain't heading back home. So it's definitely going forward, John. You know, I like the track. I agree with what the Rock Professor said. It's definitely a deep cut, but well at home on this album. You know, it's definitely a track that gives this album the continuity that the album needs, and we'll obviously talk a little bit more about that later on towards the conclusion. I've given this a solid 8 out of 10, John and Simon, and again, never a skip.
Yeah, this would probably be the least best song on this album, I would imagine, for what I think. Mainly being that it seems to be the start of an idea of a good song and a jam. If you take the lyric sheet and you take anything that's repeated off it, you're left with about 15 words. It's the same thing over and over again. And I felt myself a couple of times sort of saying, "Oh, this thing's still going on." There's nothing new that they hadn't already put through it. It's like I said, it's a good jam. It's got a great beat to it, I would have probably, try to flesh out the lyrics a bit more or put a story to it or something. But like I said, this album for me has probably got 5 songs at the moment that are just the one sort of like interchangeable, not really memorable. You said it wasn't memorable before, Simon, and I think this is what it's really. This is the one out of all of them that is the least memorable, or probably the most memorable, because you only have to remember 2 lines and you know the whole song.
Yes.
But, to take that how you like. But look, like I said, it sounds good, and while it's playing there, it's fine to keep going. But I don't think it really says too much, and I don't think it's anything different to 100 other Stone songs that you might put on instead. So this one, I was a bit brutal with it, and I only gave it a 6. I would like to have seen them develop it a bit more and make more of a song out of it. But sometimes you've only got a little bit to say, and just let the music carry on, and that's fair too. But that's what it felt like to me.
I think you're right, John. I think that lyrically it's not very strong, but I think they went for that kind of rock and roll sort of thing, that as a kind of up tempo opener to side 2, because you always open side 2 with an up tempo song in it. And I think that you're right, that it works on a kind of musical level reasonably, but lyrically it doesn't really do very much. And ultimately, there's, as Andrew said, there's not enough there to really make it that memorable. Really, cruises past, it's fine, And I wouldn't skip it.
And following a masterpiece as well doesn't help it. So,
well, no, yes, at least you have to get up and turn the record over.
Yeah.
Well, no, but I mean, it is interesting that, and we talk about a lot about this, but how do you follow a masterpiece? You put Angie on the end of side 1, and then you've got that gap to kind of go and get up, turn it over, and put on side 2, or quite often you listen to one side of an album. Well, yeah, and quite often you listen to one side of an album, but not both sides of it. So I can see, you've got that clean break of turning it over, the physical having to get up, turn it over kind of thing, which probably helps it a bit, because when you listen to it on Spotify and you go straight into it from Angie, it's I don't think that necessarily helps it in too many ways. But, anyway, the second track is "Hide Your Love." Apparently, Mick was playing a piano between sessions when Andy Johns, the engineer, encouraged him to record what he was working on, and that became the basic track, which the Stones then recorded in Rotterdam at Didolian at the concert hall rather than the studio proper. Jagger's voice bleeds through from when he was singing on the piano track. You can hear it with headphones on. You can hear some sort of background. But again, this kind of has a sort of barrel house blues piano as its main instrument. That must be Ian Stewart. Quite that typical Stone swaggering tempo that that only they can do, kind of swinging thing. Good Mick Taylor solo, and that kind of very odd kind of sort of Salvation Army big bass drum that keeps the beat all the way through, together with the hand claps that come and go periodically. And again, you've got a second solo by Mick Taylor, and I can listen to Mick Taylor all day long. I think he's a fantastic guitar player. His fluidity and melody are really good, and so I think seems to be mainly a sort of a as much as anything else, an vehicle for Mick Taylor to play lots of cool electric guitar. Again, I gave this 7.5 out of 10, but not a skip. I wouldn't skip it. Andrew,
You're right, Jimmy Ray. Regardless, not to be weird, but being involved in music seems to extend a person's life, regardless of detrimental life choices. Rock on. Yep.
If you can make it past 27, you're gold.
Yeah. Hide Your Love. It's a great solo, isn't it, by Mick Taylor? It's fantastic. Go and check it out, folks. It's just a shame that it's in this song because the song has a poor ending. It lacks power and depth for me. It's one of the weakest Rolling Stones songs ever. And I'd only listen to it because of Mick Taylor. Otherwise, it would be a skip. And because of that, John, I gave it 5 out of 10.
Ooh.
Ooh. See, Tony's giving it a 10.
Wow.
Oh, Tony, sorry, mate. We're
Well, I've always said music is the well. You bring your bucket and you take what you can out of it.
true enough. Sure enough.
100%.
Yeah, I'm not. What was that? Was that it, Andrew, for you?
Oh, that's it, brother.
Yep,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not particularly enamored with the song itself. Again, like I said, there's half of this album is great Stones sounding music,
Hey, Brad.
and there's nothing that you need to sort of like it's not like a Supertramp song will come on all of a sudden and you can't stand the guy's voice and you run to turn it off.
Sure.
There's nothing wrong with anything on this album as far as just putting it on and having a listen in the background. This isn't something that I would much like I said, I wouldn't run to put 100 years ago on. I wouldn't run to put this one on either. But definitely all through this album, particularly on this song, like I completely agree with Andrew, and the stuff that Mr. Taylor's doing here is just a joy to listen to. And sometimes the music that you listen to is just the vehicle for some guy to do some really tasty playing over the top of. And in this case, that's what I did for this one. I'm not. I don't know this song well enough yet to really know if I like it or not as a song. Definitely, Mick singing on it is extremely Mick. Mr. Jagger, I'm talking about. And, the pain in the ass having two Micks in the band and not knowing who you're talking about. But no, definitely, at the first couple of listens, I thought he was saying something about getting high, and when I sat down about the third listen, we actually sat down with the lyrics and had to listen to it at home rather than just on the drive to work. I was able to figure out better what was going on there. But I gave this one a 7. Musically, I like it. Musically rather than songly. I don't know how much of a good song it is, but definitely some great music there.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. Thank you, John. So, good morning to Brad, who's hopefully in sunny Tassie and having a lovely time. Hope it's going well, Brad.
I was the only one watching you, Brad, before.
Yes. Yeah. I had a temerity to be asleep. I mean, honestly, distinct lack of loyalty, isn't it? Being asleep in the middle of the night. Anyway, so track 3 is Winter, which I think is kind of it's basically it's a kind of mid-tempo electric ballad, isn't it? It's got some nice chimey guitars on it and things. Nicky Hopkins on piano. It's quite funny that that it's credited to Jagger Richards, but probably actually composed by Jagger with Mick Taylor, who didn't get credit for it. That's how you operate. So I mean, here they are in sunny Jamaica, and the Stones are writing a song about of a Northern Hemisphere winter, which is that's quite paradoxical about that. As I say, it's a kind of mid-tempo electric sort of ballad. I think it has a melody, it has hooks to it. I think it's really good. I like the strings. I think Mick Taylor does a really cool solo on it as well. Nice, cool, lots of vibrato on it as well, which is plenty of feel, really. I've listened to this quite a few times. Been round it quite a few times to sort of, and always like it. Always listen to it to the end. It's got some nice dynamics with the use of the strings and dropping down and then coming back in again. So that's pretty cool. I gave this 8 out of 10, but never a skip. Andrew.
North winds and Christmas tree lights. You're right, Simon. You know, again, Mick Jagger has that just uncanny ability to, conjure up a feeling, an experience, even when he's in the middle of the Caribbean, just remarkable because the song, when I first heard it, and even now when I hear it, it just, I just think of Northern Winters. The strings of Nicky Harrison, on this track, take the song, escalates the song, doesn't it, to an epic status, in my opinion. What he's done with this song, it's just remarkable. Mick Jagger apparently plays a couple of chords on this track, but the incredible solo, John, is Mick Taylor. It's one of the greatest solos I think that Mick Taylor's ever done. Remarkable track. Stones fans would be aware, Jimmy Miller apparently wasn't happy with Mick's vocals. They ran this track, I think, 4 or 5 times, and they were booked for him to do it again, but he had to go off. He got an urgent phone call from Bianca, and back then,
Bianca.
when Bianca phoned, Mick used to run. So I don't think he does that anymore. But back then he did. Well, with Bianca, he certainly did a lot of running to her. And they never redid the vocals. And for the life of me, I can't understand why Jimmy Miller thought the vocals weren't good enough, because I think it's one of Mick Jagger's greatest vocals. It's an incredible track. Andy Johns is on record and said that it was one of the best songs that the Stones ever recorded. And I agree with him. It's up there as one of their best songs. And for me, I have to give this a Brad score. I just think it's one of the greatest songs ever. It's one of my favourite Rolling Stones songs. And I urge you, please, to go and listen to the guitar work, because Mick Taylor, what he's given us on this track especially, is just, it's phenomenal. John.
Yeah, this song's a weird one for me. I got the feeling that I should like it more than I do. And again, might be just, it's going to take me a few more listens to keep going with it. I can't fault it, but it hasn't grabbed me. The playing on it is great. The singing on it's great. It's definitely got a much better lyrical vibe than some of the stuff that I've complained about on the earlier tracks. And it definitely has a, for me at the moment, it's kind of the opposite of the sum being greater than the parts. At the moment, the sum's not. I'm missing something out of all of these parts for some reason, and I'm pretty sure it's me. But for some reason, this is one of the songs that's sort of like lumped in with the other 5 songs that are just the extra Stone songs on this album, apart from the ones that have really jumped out at me. So, but I can recognise something in this that I'm sure I'm not getting yet. So I've put down a 7 for it, but I think that I should have put more. But I'm not getting it at the moment, and I think I need more time with it. But like you said, the Mick Taylor's again just doing marvelous things on this. The song itself is very well put together. It's very fleshed out. I'm just waiting to find the right string to pull to get me in.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel a bit churlish about only giving it 8. I do really like it, but yeah, sort of. I think I'm still slightly in John's camp. Is that when I hear it, it's great, but it's ask me to whistle it.
Yeah,
Ask me to sing it, and I haven't arrived at that yet as a thing. So kind of use that as a bit of a barometer for it. So the penultimate track on this is "Can You Hear the Music," which has, this is quite sort of progressive and psychedelic in a way. It has those kind of phased keyboards like No Quarter that remind you of that Led Zeppelin No Quarter kind of phased keyboard thing that they use on that, and also flute as well, which is a bit of a departure for the Stones. Not many tracks. Just reminded me a bit of Traffic actually with the flute and things, and kind of a nice piano, horns as well, and some percussion with congas on it. It's I yeah, to me sort of forgettable. I don't really remember this song very much. I don't think it's got very much lyrically to it. It's very much about, can you hear the music and can I hear the drummer get me into a groove kind of thing. So it's a kind of description of them being in the studio a bit. I mean, it's okay. I don't think I'd skip it, but it's only a 7 out of 10 from me as the penultimate track. It's the worst track on the album. See, theory proved. Andrew.
Hey, Hugh. Good to see you. And I urge you, folks, please. I earlier
Morning, Hugh.
dropped a link to Hugh's latest video on his channel. Please go and check it out. And I'll attach a link to Hugh's channel on here. We want to get him to 1,000 ASAP. He deserves it. Works hard on his channel.
Does,
look, I have
yeah.
to agree with you. That Eerie Flute by Jim Horn is amazing, isn't it? But it's psychedelia or psychedelic or psychedelic revisited. Definitely this track for me, full of overdubs and that synthesized. I don't know if they had synthesizers back then, but it they were doing something. Vocal playbacks as well. Simon on here. Wah. Mick Taylor on bass, couldn't even save the song. And who was playing? Mick Taylor playing most of the guitar lines. I look. You gave it 7.5, Simon.
7.
See, okay, I gave it 7 too. So, but I have again, folks. It's not a skip. It's definitely a play. But to use what John's been trying to say the last couple of songs, it just doesn't bite me. It's not biting. It's not a.
No.
It's not a like, come bite me. Has it bitten you, John? Does it bite you?
I could just say ditto, and we could move on to the next one. Again, it's one of the ones, like I said, this Winter Hide Your Love, Silver Train's kind of like a bit underneath them all. 100 years ago, they all fit as a big jellyfish to me. They're all kind of at the moment, again, walking in only knowing the one song. There's been a couple of songs that have grabbed me, and then there's the rest. And the rest of it is all very consistent, and there's nothing awful. And it all sounds like the Stones. It's not like some of the later albums where you've got the disco song and the funk song and the rock song and the this and that. This is a very, sort of like coherent listen all the way through, and definitely feels like an album. And it's, an enjoyable listen. But it's exactly what Simon said before. You walk away from it 5 minutes later, you can't hum it. You know, there's plenty of good things happening through it, but in the end, there's nothing that you know, latches onto your brain and stays in there. Meanwhile, there's some of the, you know, awful shit that you can't get out of your head sometimes. But yeah, I mean, my notes say 7 as well. I think we've this is the one track where we basically all said the same thing.
Cool.
Proving my theory that the second last track is always
Well, not really. If your theory is
Oh,
correct, this is exactly where Silver Train would be for me. But
yeah,
again,
that's true. Yeah.
the thing is it's never only quality that runs your sequencing, because sometimes the fact that this is the fast song or the slow song, that means that it needs to go in this
absolutely.
spot. So, you know, as a quality wise thing, I don't think that you know, like, and then, you know, go put a fast song against a slow song and say which is better or worse because of those two things. So yeah, I think that's a bit of oversimplification, but
no, I think that has merit there for sure. Yeah. That's a good point. So the last track is Star Star. Yeah, probably infamous, I would say, or it's always been infamous for its lyrics, which we won't go into too much. But
well, I need you to explain to me the lyrics, mate. Can you quote some of them for me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. It's what's it? Call me on the you know, honey, honey, call me on the telephone is definitely a rewrite of the Promised Land. Chuck Berry's Promised Land. Yeah. Oh well, here's that's and some of it. No, not going to quote because it's apparently it's yeah. Clearly, this is a song about groupies and songwriters often write about subjects they're familiar with. Mick Jagger was an expert in this area. Well, that's probably it then. Probably annoyed to be Anchor no end anyway, but it's, you know, it's basically, I would say it's in musically it's a sort of Chuck Berry rewrite, isn't it? It's a good old rock and roll Rolling Stones rock and roll thing, complete with those Chuck Berry riffs and that they play all the way through it. Yeah, it's got plenty of verve, plenty of energy to it, and some filthy lyrics and a nice twin guitar solo, you know, a la Chuck Berry. You know, two different versions of Chuck Berry riff going on. Always great fun to me. Always, you know, always a great finisher for me. And you know, they've played this quite a lot live since. So I give this a 9 out of 10, and definitely never a skip. It's a typical Stones fun song, I think. Andrew.
Yeah, you're right, Hugh. That's what we said at the beginning. Definitely a slow burner for me. It was an album that I came to late compared to a lot of the other, you know, Stones great albums. But, you know, still deserves its own treatment. So we're contributing to that, aren't we, John and Simon? As the Rock Professor said, yeah, folks, it's a rip-off of Chuck Berry's song that's never been written. And... you know, let's be fair, you know, Keith Richards idolized Chuck Berry, you know, right from the word go in 62, 63, Brian Jones and Keith Richards were, you know, learning off records, weren't they? Jimmy Rogers, Muddy Waters, you know, and Chuck Berry for... Keith Richards especially, and you know there's a ton of Rolling Stones songs out there, John, where you know Keith Richards has that Chuck Berry rhythm down pat. Having said that, though, you know he still managed to get told off, didn't he, in '86 by Chuck Berry, didn't he, when he was trying to teach him how to do it
funny,
properly.
yes.
Chuck,
and we've spoken about
everyone.
and we've spoken about that because the camera focuses on Keith Richards' face when, the third time, and he's telling him, hold it, you got to hold it, and then you pull it down, and then you let it up. And the camera focuses on Keith, and he's just going, what, But anyway, he idealized him. And this is just another homage to one of his heroes. You got Mick Taylor playing rhythm on this track. And if it wasn't for Keith playing lead on this track, on this album, and I've got to mention too that this was the last track apparently John and Simon that they worked on. So they knew this was going to be the last track. So I think that's one of the reasons why Keith pulled it out of the bag, as far as providing the guitar solo, because it's a pretty good guitar solo, from Keith Richards. Sympathy for the Devil off Get Your Yayas Out, where Keith starts the guitar solo and then Mick takes over. It's one of the greatest interweaving of guitar solos ever recorded, in my opinion. God bless Keith for still at this time being able to sort of pull out that 6-string John and play a great solo. If he hadn't have done that, I think this album would have been a catastrophe. And I think that edginess, Simon, that you spoke about with the lyrics, suited the Rolling Stones, because in 73 they were still a dangerous band, living off, Altamont and the 72 tour. The hype about Emmett, being the head of Atlantic Records, getting them to change the lyrics, or change the title of the song, because originally it was going to be called Fucker. But he managed to say, no, we can't do that. This, even for you guys, we're not going to do it. It's got to be star. So, good on the Stones for doing that, John. I don't know, I know deep down you're a rebel, so you probably would have appreciated the original title.
Yeah, they once asked me to describe myself in 3 words. I said, I am a rebel.
I promise I'll finish this little rant and get on to John soon, but I love the song, and I love the controversy around it, Simon. That's the Rolling Stones for me. The Rolling Stones are all, if they're not being arrested for smoking pot and pulled before the magistrates and, having news of the world tipping off the cops, and Anita pissing off, the Rasta Mafia and Jamaica. It's just fantastic.
Just an everyday tale of the Rolling Stones.
These skinny guys, these skinny English guys from London town, pissing people off. I love it. 10 out of 10, John. Never a skip.
Yeah, well, definitely Chuck Berry being one of the most important architects of rock and roll. This is definitely an homage, and they're definitely chucking a few berries with this song. From the actual intro, which is very, very close to the probably one of the most famous Chuck songs, being Johnny Be Good.
100%.
It's a rollicking rocker. You could, sort of like court controversy by putting profanity into a song, and if it was a lesser song, that's where it would have been. It would have been a bit of shock value, and that would have petered out. But they've chosen, I think, very, very smartly for the subject matter. They've chosen the Chuck Berry style to bring it back to the rock and roll that everybody knows, and
Yep.
The lyrically the social commentary in it is clever, which then makes the controversy not the only thing about the song and not the focus of the song. Yeah, it gets your attention. Come for the 4-letter word and you stay for the cleverness of the song.
Yeah.
I think it's a great tune. Played fantastically by the band. You know, they are, after all, a great rock and roll band. And while a Chuck Berry song doesn't sort of like stick out like a sore thumb in amongst all those other 9 very Stone sounding songs, it does fit seamlessly, but it's obvious enough to be noticed that they're talking about rock and roll in general. And I just think that lyrically it's very, very cleverly put together. A great listen. And yeah, I'll give this one a 9. I think it wraps up the album beautifully. I think if you would have put it any earlier in the album, it would have kind of stood out too much. But it's the perfect ending to a very consistent, very an album that's got one sound all the way through it, even though it's not the same thing over and over again, but definitely runs a very sort of like even arc along it. And yeah, it just I think for the 10 songs that are on this album, everything is exactly where it needs to be.
Yeah, good point, John. Hey, I'd say about it that I think that, you know, that you can't just do Exile on Main Street over and over, can you? You can't just do Sticky Fingers over and over. You've got to move forward. And, you know, I think this is the Stones moving forward, and some of it works better than others. But I think, you know, all the tracks have some merit on them. You know, the use of orchestra, we've got the use of the clavinet, very kind of that Stevie Wonder kind of classic sound, moving into more into that funk territory, you know, with the horns as well. And, you know, whilst retaining your rock and roll roots, you know, I think Mick Taylor's, you know, does some fantastic work on this record. I think, you know, his contribution stands out definitely. But as a, you know, I think it's, you know, it's them expanding their horizons, you know, doing what they do, because you can't just do Exile, as I've just said, you know, over and over. You've got to, you know, they're looking at new ways of doing it, and this is, you know, looking at new directions, new influences, new things that they want to do. So I think it's definitely worth it to myself. I think, you know, I don't necessarily has all fantastic songs, and I think some of them, you know, John, as you've said eloquently, you know, take a bit of time to get into, and maybe they're not quite as strong as, you know, as they could be. But, you know, I think it's definitely an album that has merit, and you know, and it has Angie on it, which is you know, which is an amazing song. So yeah, I've been really pleased to have lived with this for a week and kind of remind myself about you know, and how much I've enjoyed listening to it. I enjoyed quite a lot of those eclectic kind of, you know, the bits thing. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Simon. Thank you for picking this album. And again, John ZD351, our brother, thank you again for jumping on and offering your insight and appreciation and your score. We love it, and we certainly look forward to you coming on. We're not going to be back on the channel this time next week, folks, if you were at the start of the show. But the Rock Professor and I and Brad may do a midweek show. So hit the notifications button. Who's got the album pick, Simon, for the week after?
Well, it'll be either you or Brad.
Okay.
So we say it's Brad because he's not here.
What did you do before last week?
Cream.
And that was your pick, so it'd have to be Brad. Was it your pick or Brad's pick? Was Cream? Who picked the Cream?
No, it was Andrew's. It was Andrew's pick, Brad. Cream.
Thank you, Phil.
Well, if Brad decides to show up, if he reads his calendar correctly, it's his pick.
And Phil, if you ever want to come on the show and talk about the Rolling Stones, you're more than welcome. You have a permanent invite. And again, anybody else that's here, we'll be doing a show with Hugh soon. We're going to be working something out with Hugh, but Gretch Zeppelin. The Rock Professor's going to be doing a shout out because we got to go. I'm looking at the time. We're at our 2-hour mark.
2 hours, yes, bang on.
So Thank you, folks, for joining us. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please do, and go to our friends on our channel's page, please, and subscribe. I'll hand it over to the Rock Professor.
Yeah. First of all, thanks to the 21 people who've given us a thumbs up. That's really nice. So thanks everyone for doing that. And thanks to Ellen, who's here every week. And despite the fact that Brad's not here, she's still here. So thanks, Ellen, for your support. It's fantastic.
Thanks, Alan.
Phil Byers,
Means a lot.
thanks, Phil. Great comments. Jimmy Ray Hawkins, hope we're sending you to sleep, Jimmy Ray. Get some shut eye. Hugh Caldwell, of course. Hugh, check out Hugh's channel. He's got some amazing musical stuff going on there. I've got Jim as well. Thanks, Jim. Good to see you. Hope you're well. Enjoying yourself. Brad as well. Safe journey home, Brad. Hope you're good, and we'll see you in the week, maybe, if we're up for something. Tony as well. Tony Bowen. Good to see you, Tony. Back from your travels. Mission RD 100. Great. Thanks for dropping by. Gretch, of course. Gretch Zeppelin. Always here, entertaining us. So thank you, Gretch, for that. Frosted Head as well. Thank you for dropping by, Frosted Head. That was really good to see you. Albert Arthur Parsnips. Fantastic name. Thanks for dropping by, Albert. And have an enjoyable time listening to it later. See how much you disagree with us. Tony, Bill. I think that's everyone who made a comment. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Thanks everyone again for your continued support. Turning up every week. Fantastic to see you. And we'll see you in 2 weeks, or in the week, whichever is the sooner. Take care. Have a good week. See you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Take it away, boss. Yay!